U.S. produces about 90 million tons of steel and nearly 3.5 to 4 million tons of aluminum.
Okay, put that into the context of what we use versus what we import.
We use about 90 to 100 million tons. So steel's kind of like made to order.
Yeah.
That's the way it works. Aluminum, not the same situation. We produce, what did I say, 3.5. We're consuming double that. But, 50% of what we consume comes from Canada.
Okay. You mean our trading partner?
Like our biggest trading
You
partner.
saw that Ontario ad yesterday during the Super Bowl?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was thinking to myself, when did they, put that into the mix?
Well, I thought it was an interesting mix overall. So what is the impact of these tariffs? So it sounds like, let's take steel first of all.
Sure.
Like, is it a problem?
Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask the steel makers today and the service centers who buy the steel from them and sell to the consumers, they're going to say, no, this is not a problem.
Stocks are rallying.
This is good for our profits. We want more domestic produced steel. And so this will give us the runway to feel confident that we can make more mills or produce more and have hefty profits from doing so.
How quickly do we do something like that? I think about all of the, fracking craze and the drilling, and you go up to, the west of the United States. We're like, we've seen these boom and busts before. So how quickly, if that's the case, can you actually build out the facilities to ramp up?
Yeah, listen, if you're just building a new electric arc furnace now, which is your typical kind of steel mill in the United States, realistically, you're probably talking 2 to 3 years, depending on if you have any tie-ups. Like making a manufacturing plant, like it's not like, just like producing toys from Mattel that go on the shelf. Like sometimes you start building a plant and like things go wrong. And there's only like 2 consultants you can deal with. And so it might take longer. I mean, we saw this with Steel Dynamics. They had a mill down in Texas that they spent years. It's fine. It's doing fine now, but it took a year or 2 longer than I think people were anticipating. I think the bottom line is like, it's a 2 to 3 year time span. There are not a lot of plans right now to be building out a ton of new mills. There is obviously
steel or aluminum.
Well, definitely not aluminum, right?
Yeah.
So actual aluminum plants that make primary aluminum, there are plans, no plans to build new aluminum. There hasn't been a new aluminum mill plant built in the United States in 40 years. What they do build in the United States are something called re-rolling facilities, where they buy already made metal, they melt it down and turn it into products. We do have a couple of new ones of those coming online because, listen, there's really good demand in the packaging space and can making, and the automakers are always going to be on high demand. But listen, it's also not clear, like, what is the intention of the tariffs? I think the intention that Donald Trump's going for this time around is the idea of bringing more manufacturing back to the United States or having others build new plants in the United States.
But as you mentioned, the timeline on that is not even close to overnight.
Right.
So could these actually accomplish that goal?
Long term, yes. And I know this is like a crazy thing for us all to think about, but in my world of metals and mining, where timelines are years, not months,
right?
They do say, listen, if we want a chance in certain production industries, we do need the timeline to say, yeah, we can do this in 3 to 4 years. If you put things like tariffs in place that give us the confidence that when the thing is finally done, we'll actually be profitable because the prices are going to be fair across the board.
Well,
that's what they argue.
FYI, in 2 years we have midterm elections. In 4 years we have another presidential election. A different president could come up and say, let's assume these tariffs last, could say, no more tariffs. So like, I'm wondering from a steel company's perspective, or someone who might create, go back to aluminum production here. I mean, how are they gaming this out to say, do we make the bets to do the build?
I mean, there are some really profitable steelmaking companies. Like Nucor Corporation is a great company. Steel Dynamics is a great company. They might be sitting there today saying, cool, this gives us the cover to feel confident on some of these other projects that we've had in the pipeline that we haven't talked about.
Right.
Do look like good bets going forward 5-10 years. I mean, I don't know for sure, but they could be having that conversation today.
What does it do to the steel and aluminum that we import to use?
Well, we're going to anger a lot of foreign producers. I mean, we import a lot of aluminum and steel from the United Arab Emirates, Brazil, Mexico, and Canada, right? Like, they're not going to be happy about this. They have major questions and concerns. And of course, buyers, right? They're going to have to pay more. If you're buying steel right now, which people aren't. There is no spot activity happening in the steel market right now. They're just taking contracted metal. Suddenly you're telling them they're going to be paying, what, $150 per ton more? They're not going to be happy about that. Inventories across the United States of steel right now are the highest we've seen in years.
Why is nobody buying it?
The demand's not there. Remember, interest rates are still high.
Right.
Costs are still high. The construction industry is getting absolutely torn up. And the construction industry is one of the great demand industries for steelmaking. So what? You're going to go and you're going to add these tariffs? It's not going to suddenly spur consumption in the construction industry.
That's what I was kind of confused about, the rally that we're seeing in all of these material stocks, the aluminum producers. Because I'm just kind of like, well, wait a minute.
They've been really battered. They've been really, they're really battered. I mean, one of the major steel index, the S&P sub steel index, dropped by the most in 2024 since 2018. I mean, it was a terrible year. Interest rates are still there. Inflation is still a problem. And when you talk to these metal making industries, they're the bottom line cost, right? And so if their consumers are sitting there saying, yeah, just financing is way too expensive right now, we're not going to move forward with the project that we had in the pipeline, then, that's bad news.
Is this a commodity in the sense of the steel and aluminum you get from U.S. producers is the same as the steel and aluminum you get from producers outside of the U.S.?
Yes.
Do customers care where it comes from apart from price?
For the most part, no. Now, when you get into products, you get into very specific types of steel products and types of aluminum products, they do care because that is a value add. But if you're just talking raw steel making and primary aluminum making, I've heard this since I started covering this stuff 10 years ago. The Chinese do it just as well as the Americans. Everybody figured out how to make great steel forever ago. The chemistry's there. Yeah. Now, the steel makers will say, no, but our steel, this is an alloy. It is particularly better. But if you talk to actual consumers in the market, they're like, no. Like, maybe I like the buyer, who I'm buying from. I like doing business with them. But, like, the steel itself, like, yeah, they all pretty much do it pretty well. How
do you think about trade agreements and where we buy things like steel or aluminum from, and what that means geopolitically and those alliances?
I think in 2016, we respected these alliances. It was part of the post-World War II union, of the world. The West kind of said, listen, soft power is important, and these open markets lead to more efficiency and better profits across the spectrum. But I think Donald Trump changed the calculus, and I think he took a page out of the steel maker trade book, which is some people do cheat. They dump and they add, subsidies to whatever they're trying to sell. And in that regard, it is unfair. So today, I think that's where this conversation is now, right? Is like, well, do we care about the alliances? Sure. But we also have to make sure that things are fair on the trade level. That's the thinking.